Alright, I'd like to go over the VideoRay cockpit. Now this is the software that's pre-installed on your ROV control panel. When you open up your control panel, you'll see the computer there. We're going to go ahead and lift that up, open it up, power up your system. Remember, we're going to plug it in first. Make sure the GFCI, ground fault circuit interrupter, is on. We're going to flip on the main power for the control panel. And then we're going to power up the computer, which is just the universal power button on the when you open it up on the top right corner of your Dell or your Toughbook PC. When everything is done booting up on your screen, you're going to come to a standard Windows desktop here. We'll have the VideoRay logo on it, support information on there as well. You should see 5 icons here. One is the VideoRay Pro 4 user manual online version, your data where your videos and still images are stored, the VideoRay cockpit application itself, device manager, and your recycle bin. So this should be, if you're used to using Windows PCs, you should be used to seeing the screen. So once everything's powered up, your sub has been connected, you've gone through all that pre-connection instruction. We're going to start up the VideoRay cockpit. Now this is the software control that allows you to interface with the sub. So like any other desktop application, we're going to double click the VideoRay cockpit to open it. You'll see a splash screen come up. Right now we're using version 2013. We do have sporadic email or software updates that will notify you by email from support. There is a new version coming out very shortly. It'll be a 2015 version. So be on the lookout for that. When you have a brand new system and you open up the VideoRay cockpit application, the first thing you're going to see is the Pro 4 online operator manual. Now this lives in your PC, so it's not connected to the internet, but it's here. This is going to give you a rundown of everything you need to know: quick start instructions, equipment guide, general operations, maintenance, etc. So you have this. You have these videos that are delivered with the ROV system. We have online training videos. We have the basic operator training documentation that comes with it. So there's lots of different places that you can find questions for your Pro 4 ROV system. If you don't want this to come up every time you open up VideoRay Cockpit, simply check this here, and it won't pop up next time you open VideoRay Cockpit. So this is basically what you're going to see when you open VideoRay Cockpit. You're going to have, and we're going to go through all these different instruments one by one, but you should be seeing most of this stuff here when you open that application. I'm just in front of a backdrop right now, a VideoRay backdrop. So that's our live camera view here, in case you were wondering. First, we're going to talk about the main video window that you see. It's kind of the main part, the eyes of your VideoRay, what it's seeing underwater. So we're going to go over this first. So you can see in the video window itself, I have a date and time stamp. Right now I'm on the East Coast outside of Philadelphia, so we're set for that. It's probably going to be set for that wherever you go. So it's a good idea to go into your computer PC settings and change to your local time. It's something that I should probably start letting our QC people know, is to update the date and time, but I think right now it's set to Eastern Standard Time. So you'll have a date and time stamp here. This is recorded on your video. You also have the heading of the vehicle, the depth of the vehicle, and the water temperature. And I'm going to show you how you can change these between imperial and metric a little bit later. Obviously, you have a forward-looking color video screen here. It is 170, 180 degrees tilt. So this is what it looks like when we're tilting. And I'm going to show you that instrument and that on the hand controller when we cover the hand controller as well. Continuing with the video window, though, this is a resizable window. You can make it larger or smaller, and you can also move these instruments just like Windows on your desktop, basically. So if you do have the external, the monitor, the secondary monitor, you can move these back and forth on that to give yourself a little bit more room. The second monitor is great. It gives you more real estate so you can move things around. Starting over to the left on top here is our main camera instrument. This is going to let us know where the camera is pointing. So right now it's indicating that I'm pointing straight ahead. If I move that, if I tilt that, it's going to show me that I'm pointing straight up here, and then again straight down. So it's easy to see when you're on the surface where that's pointed. You're like, yes, I'm looking straight forward right now. But when you're underwater with, and if you're especially in mid-water with no reference, you're not sure where your camera's pointed, this instrument will let you know right here. The white line in the camera tilt mechanism here is going to let us know about the focus on our camera. We can manually focus in and out on our subject. So usually I'm leaving that right in the middle. It's a good idea. If you want to get a tight focus on something, get very close to it, make sure the camera is in focus, and back away from it, and you'll make sure that your shot's in focus. The switch here means is if we have an external camera or secondary external camera mounted on, which is one of our video array options, we can mount it on top of the ROV, pointing it in any different direction. And if we want that view, we'll simply hit switch, and I don't have one connected right now, but it'll give us the live feed from that secondary camera. Tilt indicator is up right now. That's what this instrument is right here. Or we can see our camera menu. This is going to let us play with the functionality of the main camera inside the Pro 4. You can see here you have manual control over items like the lens, the camera exposure, white balance. Wide dynamic range is one of the features of our camera. Basically, that feature is going to take out very exposed parts of the image, very underexposed parts of the image, and kind of balance them out to give you better picture quality. So it's something you can play around with. Of course, it looks different underwater, so it's a good idea to get yourself to a spot underwater with a good subject in front of you and play around with the white balance, the exposure, the wide dynamic range, and all of these other menu items here in the video array camera. And there's also a factory default if you get too far gone and you don't remember where you were and you want to reset it to the factory default. There's that option as well. So these buttons over here will move you through the camera menu. You can also use the arrows on your keyboard. When you want to exit something, it's a push to the right on the arrow. So that's your camera menu. And under here we have our light meter. We have variable intensity lights on the Pro 4. The button's right under the joystick on your hand controller. So we can we can hold the button and step up all the way to 100%, and we can hold the button, step back down to 0% or off on the lights, or we can just click once to give us, a lower illumination if we need to. Now it's a good idea if you're in an area with a lot of fine particulate or sediment in the water to not blow out the lights or kick them up to 100% because it really blows out your image. So step up your lights slowly until you get the desired image you want. It's a good thing about having variable intensity lights is that you don't have to go either full 100% on or 0 off. So that's your lighting there. I like to pilot with the tilt indicator on, obviously, because it shows me where my camera's pointing. So that's the main camera menu. I should mention while I'm here that all of these instruments are movable, so you can take them and customize your screen any way you like. They're also resizable. You can make them as big as you want or as small as you want. You can also turn them on and off, and I'm going to show you how to do that when we get down to the user settings. I usually like to have my setup just like this, but again, it's personal preference. So it gives you the option to customize your screen. Right. The next instrument down is control sensitivity. This is going to give you information about the power that's being fed to your thrusters on the submersible. And we can fine-tune the power that we send to our thrusters, which is a good idea when say you're in a confined area and you don't need full 100% power when you push full 100% on the joystick. So we can dial this back a bit. When we ship it on full here, almost, I guess you would call it 100%, and then we actually have a turbo mode that pushes it up a little bit past 100%. It's good for high current situations. If you have a heavy payload on the ROV with sonar positioning systems, turbo is a good option. We have a preset here to fine, which is going to cut the power to the thrusters by 50%. It's good if you're inside a potable water tank or a confined space on a shipwreck or something like that. You can also slide this manually down to 0 power here and step that up as you want. 50% power up to 100% power and beyond. So it's a good idea when you're doing your basic training or getting your feet wet with the system to go in a swimming pool, play with the control sensitivity on the thrusters to figure out what it feels like on the hand controller. So again, at 100%, full push up on the joystick will give you 100% power. If we cut this in half to fine, I'm still pushing full 100% on the joystick, but it's only letting 50% of the power get to the thrusters. So it's a fantastic feature to have. Makes the system so much more versatile in confined areas or in high current areas or situations where you have to pull a lot of tether or payload. So that's the control sensitivity widget there. If you're interested in all of the numbers and customizing that yourself, all these fields are editable here. So you can, again, play around with that if you're in a swimming pool or something before you get your system out into open water. The third instrument down here is the manipulator status. This is only obviously useful if you have a manipulator arm attached. It's going to give you, if you are opening and closing, I'd be opening my manipulator now, and I'd be closing it. So it's just going to give you the action that's going on underwater with your manipulator. You should be able to see that in your video window, but it's here graphically for you as well. The fourth instrument down is a very, very handy feature. This is your water temperature. It's giving you the live temperature of the water here. Again, we can do this in metric or Celsius or Fahrenheit, and I'll show you how to change that in a second. So this is giving you the live temperature of the water here. It's also going to give you a readout of your dive, the minimum temperature that you encounter underwater, the maximum temperature that you've encountered underwater, and an average of the two. Again, that is also read out on the live video overlay on your video window, the water temperature here. You can also find that information here. The fifth instrument down on the left-hand side here is an ROV health indicator. This is a very valuable feature. It lets you know if everything is going well with your submersible, the power, communications. We have a leak detector here. It's going to let us know when humidity inside the sub has gotten high enough to the point where you might be experiencing a leak and you have to get the sub out of the water and find the cause of that before you suffer any internal damage to the electronic components. When you get your system delivered, the humidity number here should be anywhere from 0 up to about 30. That is completely acceptable. It's impossible to get almost all of the humidity out of the pressure hull during the manufacturing process, though we try to get it as low as possible. When we do our basic operator training course, we say that anywhere up to about 30, 35 is acceptable. Anywhere beyond that, your humidity or water ingress alarm is going to turn yellow when it's getting to the point of being too high, and then if there's a catastrophic failure with water, it's going to turn red. So the idea is to give the sub attention before it gets to the red one. So if you see this rising into the yellow, your humidity is getting too high in the sub, and we have to figure out why that is. So get it out of the water. And then we're also looking at the internal temperature here of the sub. These will turn yellow and red if the internal temperature is getting too high, as well as the communications. So we're sending power down to the sub through the umbilical or the tether, and we're sending data, live video, back through there. If there's a problem with communications, you're going to see it here. This will be red. Something's not right. It's usually a USB problem in the back of the control panel. So if you see that at startup, something's not connected, usually with the USB. So check all your USB connections in the back of the computer, the back of the control panel, and also your hand controller set up here. Make sure your hand controller is plugged in. And the first one is power. If there's a issue with your power, this is going to be red here. So make sure you have the proper inputs that you need. You're using the proper power source for your sub. So important instrument here, ROV health. Obviously when everything says okay and it's all green, you're good to go. Working our way around is another important instrument here. This is your heading of the vehicle. We have a 3D compass inside. It's going to give us an accurate readout no matter the pitch of the vehicle underwater. So we're going to get an accurate heading readout. We also have indicators on power to the thrusters here. I'm going to go ahead and push the thrusters forward, and you can see the green lines here move up. I'm very lightly touching it now up to full power. I'll let that go. Okay, again, remember I set this on fine power over here, so it's only giving me 50% up here. If I go ahead and click that to turbo, you're going to see the full green, full power of the system there. If you notice when I'm turning, it's going to show where my power is going to the sub. It's going to show my thrusters are engaged in forward or backwards, and if I'm full turn left, full turn right. So you can keep an eye on what your sub is doing underwater as you're feeding it commands up top. This is also where we engage our auto heading feature. If we know the heading of a target that we're trying to acquire, or if we like the heading that we're on when we're conducting a survey, we can engage our auto heading feature on the Pro 4 sub. To do that, we're going to get to the heading we want. We're going to click the auto button here, and as that sub moves, it's going to fire to keep us back on that heading. So let me try to turn this real quick and show you how the thrusters fire. Alright, so the thrusters are spinning now. They're going to try to get us back onto that 182 heading. So it's going to constantly fight to keep us on that heading. Now, this isn't auto GPS. It's not going to, get us to a target and stay there on that heading. If there's current or anything involved, it's going to push us parallel to that. Even though we may still be on the same heading, we'll be not in a direct line to our target. So that's something else to play with when you're in a swimming pool or something before you get into open water with your sub. It's a very handy feature, but it's something you need to practice and understand what it's all about before you get out there and just hit auto heading and expect the vehicle to go right to that point on the heading. So that is our heading instrument right there. Okay, we have another very handy feature on the Pro 4. This is a turns counter. When we're underwater and the vehicle, if it's turning around itself, if you're doing a lot of turns, if you're around a submerged structure, this is going to indicate how many times your vehicle has turned around itself. So if it's made one circle, you're going to have 1 here, 2 circles, 2, 3 circles, 3, and so on. It's going to give you a visual of how your tether is spinning, and then up here it's going to give one of these left or right arrows will turn white, and it's going to tell you which way to turn to get out of that mess. So if you turned right 3 times, it's going to have the white arrow illuminated to the left. As you're spinning back, this is going to be animated, showing you when you get back to 0. So it's extremely handy feature, let you know how many times you turned around yourself. If you start getting really high, can have an effect on your tether pull. If it starts getting really tight too, and you've turned around yourself an extreme amount of times, you possible damage to your tether as well. So it's a good idea to keep your eye on that turns counter and find your way out of the turns that you've gotten yourself into. And lastly, on the main screen here, we have our depth instrument. This is going to show us our depth. We can set these numbers. If we know the depth of the water that we're working in, we can set a max floor depth and then different increments in between there, and I'll show you how to change those in a second in the user settings. Your depth, the current depth of the vehicle will be displayed here in this white circle, and again that depth is also set heads up over here on your the video overlay display that's recorded on your video. We can also engage our auto depth feature here. Now, this is one of the nicest features, I believe, on the VideoRay Pro 4. It allows you to set a depth. The vehicle will go to that depth, and it'll stay there for as long as you want it to. To do that on the screen here, we're going to make sure that our depth knob is set to neutral on the hand controller, and then we're simply going to click and drag down to the desired depth. Have it set for 60 feet here, so the sub will dive by itself, hands-free, till it gets to the 60-foot mark there, and then it'll level itself out, and it'll fight to keep itself at that 60-foot mark until you either change it on the computer or you can manually take over on your hand controller. So you can see now that I've engaged the manual on my hand controller, and I can get it to, if I wanted to go to dive or come up, and then once I reset it to neutral, the auto feature will kick back in and get me to that new depth. It's difficult to demonstrate when I'm not in the water here, but it's as simple as getting to that point. You can get there manually if you want, and then click auto, or you can click and drag here, take yourself down to where you want to go. Alright, so that's the depth feature, and again we can change the increments here and the depth also between feet and meters. One thing I didn't point out on the video window here is a microphone feature. We can capture audio through the microphone on your PC. It's good if you're documenting your subject underwater and you like some voice notes on it. If you would like to document targets underwater in a text fashion, you can do that with the user defined text field here. So I'm just going to say test target 1. We're going to hit enter on that, and you can see that it appears on our video window up here. It will stay there for the duration of the subject that you're filming. If we want to get rid of it, we simply backspace and delete it, all the time hitting enter up there. If we come across our second feature that we're trying to film underwater, target 2. So we've got a video documentation and labeling that's recorded on that video to give you an idea of what it was you were looking at, and a reminder of where you were. So that's a very handy feature, the user text overlay. And then we can turn that video overlay on or off here. If you just want video with no date and time overlay, no heading, depth, or temperature overlay, we can turn that on and off. Alright, those are our main instruments here that we ship the system with it set up like this. Again, you can customize all of these, move them around however you like. Now we would like to talk a little bit about the toolbar down here for cockpit. I'll just go through them from left to right one by one. If you're doing remote piloting or remote, need remote access or anything like that, this is for your network link right here. Connecting to servers, so on and so forth. If you are using your system like this, it's a good idea to get in contact with our support, and they can help you walk through establishing network connections for remote piloting, so on and so forth. But that feature is there if you do require something like that. This is how our instruments are going to look on the screen here. So we can turn everything off, just have our window so we're not distracted by the other instruments on there. We can have them, the transparency taken down a bit on there so they're not, again, not as distracting, full on there. And we can also lock the instruments where they're at. So sometimes you have multiple users on the system. This guy likes his heading over here, he likes his video window on the other screen, he doesn't want a manipulator on there, so on and so forth. So you can lock those and you can't move them. You can see I can't really do much there. So that's a lock feature for the instruments. We have our software built in for a lot of our accessories like sonar positioning systems. So we don't need any big software update. If you were to add on something like that in the future, it's already here in the software. And you can simply access that. Of course, you must have the accessory. That would be a Blue View multi-beam imaging sonar, the smart tether non-acoustic tether-based positioning system, or the Tritech Micron small scanning sonar. So this software is already built in, but again, you have to make sure you have the hardware, that your panel is set up to accept a Blue View or the smart tether or the Micron sonar, and again that hardware is on your sub to use. So it's just letting you know that you can build your systems, and that software is already here for you. Okay, here's the user settings that I mentioned. This is going to allow you to customize your desktop further. Instruments here we can turn on and off. I guess we're calling the heading the attitude gauge. We can turn any of these instruments on and off. You can see here if you don't have a manipulator, we can turn that off. The rest of them are up though. Okay, moving our way down here, our depth gauge. This is going to let us change the grid spacing and the maximum depth on our depth gauge over here. So like I said, you can change these. Right now we have this set at 20 foot spacing, so 20, 40, 60. Let's go ahead and change those to 10. Okay, so you can see here now we have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I don't like that maximum depth. I know that I'm much more shallow than that. We're only at 50 feet here. So now we have 10, 20, 30, 40, and our 50 feet at the bottom. Okay. And we can also set a minimum depth if we're underneath something as well. Okay. Another feature that we have on here is altitude. So we're not measuring the depth from the surface to the bottom of the vehicle. We're going to measure from the bottom to the vehicle. So we're going to measure the altitude if we're flying. If we want to stay, say, 15 feet off the bottom, we know that that's the altitude that we need to be at. We can pilot by altitude instead of by depth. So again, this is something that we cover much more in depth in our basic operator training. I just want to make you aware that it's there. Some people prefer to fly like that. In some jobs, they have to use altitude instead of depth. So we do cover that in our live basic operator trainings that we hold throughout the year. And again, it's something you can play with in a pool or calm area when you get your system and you're learning it. So it's altitude. Turns counter, we can reset a base heading on here, so we can use it for navigation as well. That's something you can play around with. We do cover that as well in our basic operator training. Just to make you aware it's there. System settings. This is where we record all of our video and still images to. So when you record a video or still image from your hand controller, it goes directly to the hard drive of the computer. Here you can assign where you want that data to go. It comes shipped under the video array data folder that is on your desktop. You can also change that. The depth sensor, we don't really need to recalculate this, but it's a good idea if you're in a place with a different elevation that you use the current pressure in the air before you dive. You get a more accurate depth reading. If you want to go so far as to change the fluid density of the water, can also have an effect on the depth readout. So set that as well. If there's a compass variation in the area that you're working that you know about, and you're getting your compass on your display here is inaccurate, you can set any variation in degrees at this area here. Change your system of measure from metric. You can see now we're in Celsius or centigrade over here, and American as its software has been written. We have a software fellow with a sense of humor. And again, you can show the instructions in the user manual on startup. If you want to bring that back, you can do that here. Data import and export, I'm not going to cover these in depth. Just wanted to let you know that there are a lot of COM ports available. If you have your own type of sensors, if you're interested in data import and data export from your instruments that you have on the video array. Alright, that is the user settings field. This is a quick access to the data directory for your video and still images. We have a brand new system here, so no video has been taken yet. That would be here, easy to access and export, just onto a USB stick or a external hard drive. Let's go ahead and record a video and show you what the window looks like here, and then we'll access it. So this is telling me right now, this red dot, that I have engaged the video record. The red dot will blink as I'm flying the submersible. It'll record the whole time. It's also indicating that my audio is being recorded right now. If you don't want up here, it's going to show you that I'm recording one video. So this is going to give you just a quick heads up log on how much video and still snapshots that you've recorded. Alright, so I'm going to turn that off on my hand controller. You can see that I have one video recording now. And to access that, I'm going to use this directory. It is saved here. Again, you can move this off. You can play it back right here if you want. Okay. And again, you can move that off. So our video formats that we record on here are either a Windows Media version or in AVI, so you can change those in your user settings as well. I just want to show you real quick the advanced engine room. It's unlikely that you need to change much in here, but it's a good idea of how your system is reacting, what kind of power you have. Power is getting down to the submersible. It also shows you your serial number here, the firmware version you have, the runtime on your panel, comms turnaround, and things like that. We can get into really dialing in our thrusters and our power manager here if you want to. I'd suggest leaving it the way it is, but this is also a screen that maybe support will ask to access if you do have a problem and you're doing a remote support session, or they'll have you take a snapshot of this screen and send it to them. So just be aware of this engine room here. Alright, close that. Alright, so we go to our little maintenance and diagnostic instrument here. We get into some advanced diagnostics. This is basically giving us a readout of our advanced engine room that we had. This is something that support may ask you about. It's giving you all of the information from your system here. You can save this, print this, so on and so forth. Some interesting things we've incorporated here. It's a good idea to get involved with these. Now, you don't necessarily have to do it on here, but it's important to get into the pre-dive and post-dive checks on your vehicle. And I'm not going to enter one here, but you put your name, or if there's multiple users, they would enter their name. This feature will take them through their pre-dive check. Have you checked the visual inspection on the cartridge seals, the thrusters, so on and so forth. And again, you can do that for post-dive when you bring it back and just go down the checklist and make sure you've done everything. We also have scheduled maintenance if you like to set up your, here's the checklist for the pre-dive. And you just go down and check these out on and off. Scheduled maintenance. Some people like to get their system on a very regular and routine maintenance schedule. So you can do that here. Alright, and that is your service bay, we call it, or the maintenance and diagnostic center. Alright, if at any time you need help, we have our little life ring here. It's going to bring up the Pro 4 user manual, the online version here, tips and tricks in here about what you're looking at. And then when you're all done and your sub has been brought back to the surface and you're ready to start powering down, first thing you do here is hit the red power button. Now when you hit this, it'll close the application and it'll remember everything you had set during this session. So if you made your windows a lot smaller, if you had your instruments moved around, when you shut it down, it'll remember that and open them up the same way that you closed it. So this was a basic video tutorial on Video Ray Cockpit. There's further information in the user manual. And also we go through this very in-depth in our basic operator training courses that we hold throughout the year. So check our website out for those. Thank you.